Is this helpful to you?
It is, and you've really been, okay, let's just do it this way. You stated that the basis of our life, of a physical life experience, is freedom.
Indeed.
And that our purpose of a physical life experience is joy.
That is accurate.
And the result of it all will be called growth.
Good.
Can be called growth.
You have a triad of intentions that is so perfectly balanced that we cannot separate them one from another. We say to our physical friends, you have this triad of freedom and growth and joy. And our physical friends say, we hear you, Abraham, growth, growth, growth. We say, yes, growth, but freedom and growth and joy. And you say, yes, growth, growth, growth. Because you've been so convinced that you are unworthy and that you are here to climb the rungs of a ladder that you look for ways to prove your worthiness through your growth. And in your struggling for growth, you get yourself so far from your balance of freedom that you lose your edge of joy. Where if you will let joy be your intention, then joy will always hold you in that perfect balance between your freedom and your growth. We watch you laying on the rocks at La Jolla, basking in the freedom of that day, enjoying the sun, enjoying the wind, enjoying the smell of the sea, enjoying one another. Nothing could be better than that, you said. For the first hour, they laid there in absolute ecstasy. The second hour, it was wonderful. Third hour, Jerry's fingers began thumping on the rocks. For while he was satisfying very well his desire for freedom, his desire for growth was being left a little bit lackful. And so as that lack began to be acknowledged, he began to feel a little uneasy. And as he began to feel a little uneasy, feeling a little unproductive, then he sat up and began to think about what he wanted. And as he sat up, he began to think, and then he began to write, and then he began to engage Esther in conversation. Then they went into their hotel room, and they made some phone calls. And some of these gatherings that you are now participating in were as a result of that moment of insight. And so then as Esther and Jerry are very busy on their trail of upliftment and enlightenment, now their fingers from time to time are tapping on the rocks. But this time, not for lack of growth, but for lack of freedom. In other words, they have attracted enough physical activity, but that now they are longing for the rocks. But what is the factor that is letting them know the balance or imbalance? It is that feeling of joy, isn't it? So as joy is your constant quest, which is to say as connection is your constant quest, then from that connected state you will be guided to the perfect balance of freedom and growth, you see.
And then the last part of my question. I look at what I'm getting from you is I label it a philosophy of life. And there are many philosophies of life, and I've studied and read and experienced a number of them, tried to. And the thing that to me sets you apart, and I accept it because freak that I am, it fits me. And that is when you say joy is your purpose. Well, most of the world teaches quite different than that. They teach more like growth is your purpose.
That's why they don't have much joy.
Yeah, but how do we know you're right? You know, for me, you're right. But what if they're right? What if growth is we're here on physical form for growth so we can get to heaven and have joy, or to wherever they go after we're split from here? So how do we know that they're not right and you're wrong?
You don't.
So are we just wasting our time listening to you?
Truly, you are. You would be much better off seeking your own knowing from within. In other words, we would encourage you to trust that which comes forth from within you first and foremost.
So why do I keep listening to you?
Because you trust what comes forth from us. In other words, what comes forth from us resonates with what is within you.
Because I personally have seen freedom as the most important part of my life from the time I was as little as I can remember. Freedom was first, which alienated me from most everyone around me. And then as soon as I felt like I got free from those that I felt had some controls over me, then I really went for joy in a big way. So I'm comfortable with what you say, but I guess I'm wanting to hear from you something that could convince those who aren't comfortable with that what would like to be.
We would encourage you to look around your physical universe and acknowledge that there is not a shred of evidence to the contrary of that which we teach.
What do you mean?
We mean, as you look around your physical universe, there is not a shred of evidence to the contrary of that which we teach. In other words, if you start to notice the correlation between what you're feeling and what you're getting, then you acknowledge that, at least as far as you're concerned, that what we say relative to vibration is accurate relative to your experience. What trips you up is when you try to make your evaluations based upon what you are being given by those outside of you. Mm-hmm. You watch a newscast or an interview, and you are relying on information that has been funneled through their intentions. When you read someone else's statistics, someone else's gathering of facts, what most of you do not understand is that the facts that they have gathered are consistent with the premise with which they began to gather the facts.
Right.
And so then you just become those who are counting grains of sand. Where when you put it into the dimension of how do I feel about this, you will begin to notice that there is an utter consistency. For example, you will begin to notice that when you are appreciating someone or praising something, that you feel really good. And you will begin to notice without exception that when you are criticizing or blaming or finding fault with something, you feel lack. You feel bad. You will begin to notice a consistency in the way you feel that never wiggles around on you. Your rules wiggle around on you. Your laws wiggle around on you. One religion says this is right, another one says that very same thing is wrong. Your own government says to you, your greatest law that most of you were listening to says thou shalt not kill. And then your government says, except in this situation, and if you don't kill in this situation, we will put you in jail. And so you begin to see that all things are wiggling around on you. There is no consistency with which to develop your philosophy of life until you go to the core of your being. And when you go to the core of your being, you begin to acknowledge that everything about law of attraction is consistent. And you begin, as you begin to make the correlation between what you're feeling and what you're getting, then you begin to notice that this law of attraction stuff is so consistent that you can bet your life on it.
So what I'm hearing from you is there is no real reality other than as per the facts we're each as individuals looking for, and so there is no it's an individual reality. There is no group reality?
Let us put it this way. This will encompass everything that you've just said.
Okay.
Real reality sounds as if something will
True.
stand still for a minute.
Yeah.
Nothing, there it went again. We're here, it's gone. We're here, it's gone. We're here, it's gone. You cannot hold yourself in any point in time. We are eternally evolving and moving forward, and so there is not an ending to becoming, you see. When you say reality,
right.
You sound like you would like to get a still shot
right.
of it, and let's call this reality, and we say...
Something we can count on.
What you can count on is that the laws of the universe are consistent. And as you begin to focus upon law of attraction, and you begin to pay attention to the way you feel relative to the way you are flowing energy, you will discover that you can always count on that. And if you are looking for something to count on, we will say in all of the universe, that's the only thing that remains consistent. So your role is to discover your sensitivity to it. If law of attraction abounds, and you'll have to prove that to yourself.
That's easy.
It is, isn't it? And so as law of attraction abounds, and you start getting a handle on how you're flowing energy, and you start seeing the undeniable results of how you're flowing energy, then you reach the place where you understand how everybody's getting what they're getting. And then the mystery is out of all of it. How could God do that to those people? You do not ask that question anymore. Instead, you may say, why would they attract such a thing? Or you may say, did they attract it deliberately, or did they attract it by default? Or you may say, do they even understand that they are attracting it? But at least you will begin to allow it to be their experience.
Thank you.
And it is very nice that your inner being allows this all to be your experience. That you are truly not puppets on a string. Your inner being knows what you want and keeps reminding you in every moment, whether you are close to it or far from it. But your inner being allows you the utter free will You are so free you can even attract bondage. It's all your choices, you see. Good. What are you wanting? You are clear to some things you are wanting? Let us begin here. Now, what we would like to encourage you to do here, we'd like to use this segment as an opportunity for those of you, if you are wanting, and you can participate collectively or individually. In other words, you don't even have to speak. You can participate vibrationally as you are acknowledging. Wanting to use this segment as a very clear, very deliberate launching from where you now stand into all that is, specifically into your physical future. Some elements that from where you now stand you think would please you, delight you. From where you stand today, do you believe that you have a clear acknowledgement of what you are wanting relative to some things?